The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive station where the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered to make decisions. Inside the grand hall, 12 alien species sat in a circle. Their seats rose high above the floor, making them look down on whoever stood in the center. Ryan Clark stood in that center now. He was Earth's ambassador, the only human in a room full of creatures that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. His suit felt too tight. His throat felt dry. But he kept his face calm as he looked up at the beings who held his planet's fate in their hands. Hi. Chancellor Vexner spoke first. The Krill leader was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, even while sitting. His skin was covered in dark blue scales that seemed to absorb light. 4 eyes stared down at Ryan with what looked like pity. Ambassador Clark, we have reached our decision. Your species has expanded too quickly into space. You have claimed systems that belong to the elder races by right of history. We cannot allow this to continue. Ryan took a breath before speaking. Hi, Chancellor. Those systems were empty. No one lived there. No one had colonies there. We followed all galactic laws about expansion. Vexner made a sound that might have been a laugh. Laws written before your species learned to leave your home world. The galaxy operated under different understandings then. Understandings your people do not share. Another council member leaned forward. This one was Karl Rex, the defense minister. He was smaller than Vexner, but no less intimidating. His skin was gray and smooth, and when he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber. Earth will withdraw from all colonies established in the past 10 years. Your ships will return to your home system. You will submit to Galactic Authority jurisdiction for any future expansion. You have 72 hours to comply. Ryan felt his hands curl into fists behind his back. And if we refuse? Vexner gestured to a display that appeared in the air. It showed ships. Hundreds of them. They were arranged in perfect formation, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Then, the Krill Armada will remove your presence from the disputed systems by force. We have assembled 300 warships. According to our intelligence, Earth has 43 ships total. The mathematics are simple, Ambassador. The other council members watched in silence. Some looked bored. Others looked sympathetic. None looked like they would help. Ryan tried again. You're making a mistake. You don't understand how humans fight. We're not like you. We don't give up just because the numbers look bad. This time, several council members did laugh. Vexner raised one scaled hand for silence. Ambassador, we have studied your military capabilities extensively. Your weapons are primitive kinetic railguns. Your ships are slow. Your shields are weak by our standards. You have never fought a war against an advanced civilization. Our analysts predict your forces will hold out for perhaps 6 to 8 hours before complete defeat. This is not a negotiation. This is an inevitability. Defense Minister Colrex pulled up more data. Your flagship moves at 0.7 standard speed. Our slowest vessels move at 0.9. Your heaviest weapon has a range of 200,000 kilometers. Ours reach 300,000. Your armor can withstand temperatures up to 4,000 degrees. Our plasma weapons burn at 12,000. Ryan listened to the numbers. He knew they were accurate. Earth's technology was behind galactic standards in almost every measurable way. But he also knew something these ancient species had forgotten. You're comparing hardware, weapons and armor and speed. But war isn't just about who has the better tools. It's about how you use them. It's about strategy and adaptation and the will to do whatever it takes to survive. Vexner stood up from his seat. Even at a distance, his size was overwhelming. Ambassador Clark, your species is young. You think passion and determination can overcome superior force. This is the belief of children. The Krill Empire has fought wars for 5,000 years. We know what victory looks like. We know what defeat looks like. And we know that in 6 hours, maybe 8, your defense of New Virginia will end in surrender. Ryan looked around the chamber one more time. He saw alien faces that ranged from hostile to indifferent. No allies here. No one who would stand with Earth. Then I need to contact my government. We'll need time to consider your terms. You have 24 hours to deliver Earth's response, Vexner said. After that, the Armada begins its jump to New Virginia. I suggest you convince your leaders to see reason. There is no shame in acknowledging superior strength. There is only shame in wasting lives on a battle that cannot be won. The council dismissed him with a wave. Ryan turned and walked out of the chamber, his footsteps echoing on the metal floor. Behind him, he could hear the council members talking among themselves. Some were already discussing how to divide Earth's abandoned colonies. Ryan made his way back to Earth's diplomatic vessel. It was a small ship, designed for speed and communication rather than combat. The crew looked at him with worried faces when he entered. How bad? Asked Commander Helen Park, the ship's captain. As bad as it gets. They want us to abandon the colonies, or they'll take them by force. 300 Krill warships against our 43. Helen was quiet for a moment. What are you going to tell Earth? Ryan sat down at the communication console. He typed in the direct code for Fleet Admiral Lisa Martinez at Earth Defense Command. The signal would take several minutes to reach Earth, and several more for a response to come back. While he waited, he watched the display showing the Krill Armada gathering in deep space. The ships were beautiful in a terrible way. Each one was a work of art, covered in decorative armor that caught and reflected light. They moved in perfect synchronization, thousands of crew members working as one. It looked unstoppable. Finally, Admiral Martinez's voice came through. Ambassador Clark, I'm reading your report. The council gave us an ultimatum. Yes, ma'am. Surrender or face invasion. They're very confident. Their analysts say we'll last 6 to 8 hours at most. There was a pause on the other end. Then Martinez spoke again, and her voice was cold as ice. Ambassador, I need you to move your ship at least 5 million kilometers from New Virginia. Get clear of the arrival zone. Admiral, are you saying Earth is not surrendering? Get your ship to safety. That's an order? The connection ended. Ryan sat back in his chair and looked at Commander Park. She said no. Helen smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. It was the smile of someone who knew what was coming and was ready for it. Then I guess we're about to show these old species something new. How far does she want us to back off? 5 million clicks from New Virginia. That's almost to the observation point where the council is watching. She wants us front row for the show. Ryan nodded slowly. He pulled up the communication channel to the council station. Hi, Chancellor Vexner. I have Earth's response to your ultimatum. The Krill leader's face appeared on screen. That was quick, Ambassador. I assume your leaders have seen reason. Actually, no. Earth refuses your terms. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not submit to your authority. If you want New Virginia, you'll have to take it by force. Vexner's expression didn't change. Then the Krill Armada will depart for New Virginia in 18 hours. I'm sorry it has come to this, Ambassador. Your people have chosen bravery over wisdom. In 6 hours, perhaps 8, this bravery will end in ashes. The screen went dark. Commander Park began plotting a course to the observation area. Ryan watched the Krill Armada on the display. 300 ships against 43. Everyone in the galaxy knew how this would end. Everyone except the humans. The Krill Armada dropped out of hyperspace at exactly the predicted coordinates. 300 warships appeared in perfect formation at the edge of the New Virginia system. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons and covered in shields that shimmered like oil on water. Admiral Krish stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominant Will. He was old by Krill standards, with scales that had faded to pale blue. He had fought in 12 campaigns and won them all. This would be his 13th victory, and probably his easiest. Report, he ordered. His tactical officer checked the displays. We have arrived on target, Admiral. All ships accounted for. Formation is holding. Scanning the system now. The display showed New Virginia in the distance, a green and blue world that looked much like Earth. Orbital stations circled the planet. Settlements dotted the surface. And between the Armada and the colony, the human fleet waited. 43 ships, the tactical officer said. They're arranged in a defensive grid around the planet. All weapons powered. Shields active. They're going to fight. Krish studied the formation. The human ships were smaller than his vessels, but they were positioned well. Someone with tactical knowledge had arranged them. They couldn't win, but at least they would die with some dignity. Open a channel to the human flagship. The communication officer worked his controls. Channel open, Admiral. Their flagship is designated EDS Defiant. Captain Kevin Park commanding. Krish straightened his uniform. Even in war, proper protocol mattered. Captain Park, I am Admiral Krish of the Krill Empire. You and your fleet are outnumbered 7-1. Your technology is inferior. This battle has only one possible outcome. I offer you one final chance to withdraw. Pull your ships back, and we will take the colony peacefully. No lives need be lost today. The human captain appeared on screen. He was young, maybe 40 years old. He had dark hair and dark eyes, and his face showed no fear at all. When he spoke, his voice was clear and firm. No, that was all. Just one word. Then the screen went dark. Krish felt a flicker of respect. The human knew he was going to die, but he wasn't backing down. All ships, advance to weapons range. Maintain formation. Let us end this quickly and with honor. The Armada began to move forward. 300 ships gliding through space in perfect synchronization. Their shields glowed brighter as power increased. Their weapons charged, building up energy for the first devastating salvo. In the Council Observation Station 5 million kilometers away, alien representatives watched through high-powered sensors. Ambassador Ryan Clark stood among them. He had a sick feeling in his stomach as he watched the two fleets moving toward each other. The Krill Armada looked unstoppable. The human fleet looked tiny in comparison. High Chancellor Vexner stood beside him. It is not too late, Ambassador. Captain Park could still withdraw. The Council would accept a strategic retreat. Ryan didn't take his eyes off the display. You still don't get it, do you? We're not retreating. We're not surrendering. You wanted this fight. Now you're going to get it. The distance between the fleets shrank. 200,000 kilometers. 100,000. 50,000. The Krill ships raised their plasma cannons, preparing to fire. Their targeting computers locked onto the human vessels. Then the human ships launched. But they didn't fire weapons. Instead, thousands of small objects shot out from the human fleet. They spread out in every direction, filling the space between the two forces. Krish watched the displays with confusion. What are those? Escape pods? Debris? His sensor officer studied the readings. Unknown, Admiral. They're small, moving fast. Could be decoys or countermeasures. Our targeting systems are having trouble locking onto them. Ignore them. They're probably just trying to confuse our sensors. Continue advance. Prepare to fire. But the small objects weren't decoys. Each pod was just 2 meters long and 1 meter wide. As they spread through the Krill formation, they opened up. From each pod, 100 autonomous drones emerged. The drones were tiny. Each one was no bigger than a human fist. They were made of composite materials that barely showed up on sensors. They moved fast, powered by miniature rockets that could accelerate them to incredible speeds. And they had one purpose: destroy specific ship systems. The Krill Point defense systems tried to track them. These systems were designed to shoot down incoming missiles and torpedoes. But the drones were too small and too fast. The targeting computers couldn't lock on. The automated weapons fired blindly into space, hitting nothing. 10,000 drones swarmed the Krill Armada. They moved like insects, each one guided by basic artificial intelligence that let it identify and attack critical ship systems. They attached themselves to sensor arrays, weapon mounts, engine clusters, and shield generators. Then they exploded. Krish felt his ship shudder as the first impacts hit. Alarms began blaring across the bridge. "Report! What's happening?" The tactical officer's voice was panicked. "Multiple impacts across the hull. Small explosive charges. They're targeting our sensors. Forward array is down. Port array is offline. Starboard array is damaged." More reports came in from across the fleet. Ship after ship was reporting the same thing. Sensors going dark. Weapon systems failing. Shield generators overloading and shutting down. Communications jamming. Krish tried to order a retreat, but the command network was compromised. He couldn't reach most of his ships. The ones he could reach were already blind and helpless, drifting in space without sensors or control. 90 seconds. That's how long it took for the human drones to disable the entire Krill Armada. On the ED's Defiant, Captain Kevin Park watched the displays with cold satisfaction. Every drone had found its target. Every critical system on every Krill ship was damaged or destroyed. The enemy fleet was helpless now. "All ships," he said calmly. "Open fire." The human fleet had been designed around one primary weapon: the magnetic accelerator cannon. It was a simple concept. Use powerful magnets to launch a solid projectile at incredible speed. No fancy energy weapons. No complex plasma systems. Just tungsten slugs weighing 10 kilograms each, accelerated to 12% of the speed of light. The railguns fired. The sound of the magnetic coils engaging echoed through every human ship. Tungsten projectiles shot across the space between the fleets in seconds. There were no shields to stop them now. The Krill shields were down, destroyed by the drone swarm. The projectiles hit with devastating force. Each one carried kinetic energy measured in megatons. They punched through Krill armor like it was paper. The friction from the impact generated temperatures hot enough to melt metal. Entry wounds glowed white-hot. Exit wounds were twice as large. Inside the Krill ships, the impacts were catastrophic. Fuel lines ruptured. Reactor containment failed. Atmosphere vented into space. Crew members were thrown across compartments as their ships shook from the hammer blows of the human weapons. Krish watched his fleet die. Ships exploded. Others went dark as power failed. Some drifted away, their crews abandoning them in escape pods. In less than 2 minutes of actual combat, 274 Krill warships were crippled or destroyed. He had lost. Not in 6 hours. Not in 8 hours. In 4 minutes and 18 seconds from the first shot to the last. With shaking hands, Krish opened an emergency channel. "This is Admiral Krish of the Krill Empire. I surrender. I surrender. Please stop firing. We surrender." The human weapons went silent immediately. No more railgun rounds streaked across space. No more drones launched. The human fleet simply stopped, their ships holding position around New Virginia. Captain Kevin Park's voice came over the emergency frequency. "Admiral Krish, cease all hostile actions. Shut down your remaining weapon systems. Begin rescue operations for your crews. Human medical ships are standing by to assist. Krish could barely speak. How? How did you do this? There was a pause before the human captain answered. You studied our weapons, Admiral. You studied our ships. You studied our tactics. But you never studied how we think about war. That was your mistake. In the Council Observation Station, the alien representatives stood in shocked silence. The displays showed the wreckage of the Krill Armada floating in space. Human ships moved among them, already beginning rescue operations. High Chancellor Vexner turned to look at Ambassador Ryan Clark. The ambassador's face was expressionless, but his eyes were hard. You tried to warn us, Vexner said quietly. Ryan nodded. I did. You predicted ours. We ended it in minutes. The battle is over, High Chancellor. Now comes the hard part. Now you have to explain to the galaxy how the most powerful armada in Krill history was destroyed by 43 human ships in less time than it takes to have a meal. The council chamber would convene again soon. But everything had changed. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in 4 minutes. And nothing would ever be the same. The Galactic Security Council convened an emergency session 6 hours after the battle at New Virginia. Every seat was filled. Representatives who normally sent deputies now attended in person. The mood in the chamber was something none of them had experienced before. Fear. High Chancellor Vexner stood at his podium, his blue scales looking darker than usual. He had not slept since watching the Krill Armada's defeat. None of them had. We are here to understand what happened at New Virginia. Defense Minister Kalrex, present your analysis. Kalrex moved to the center of the chamber. Holographic displays appeared around him, showing the battle from multiple angles. Every council member had already watched the footage a dozen times, but seeing it again still felt unreal. The Krill Armada arrived at New Virginia with 300 warships. The human fleet consisted of 43 vessels. By all measurable standards, the Krill held overwhelming advantage. Superior numbers, superior technology, superior firepower. He paused the display at the moment the human ships launched their pods. This is where our analysis failed. We assumed these were escape pods or countermeasures. We were wrong. Each pod contained 100 autonomous attack drones. The display zoomed in on a single drone. It was remarkably simple. A small rocket motor, a guidance chip, and a shaped explosive charge. Nothing sophisticated. Nothing that required advanced technology to build. These drones are crude by our standards. But they were designed for one specific purpose: destroy ship systems that our sensors and point defense couldn't protect against. They're too small, too fast, and too numerous. In 90 seconds, they disabled our entire fleet. A council member from the Vex Collective spoke up. But why didn't the Krill defense system stop them? We've had automated point defense for centuries. Kalrex brought up more data. Because our systems are designed to stop missiles and torpedoes. Large objects moving predictably. The drones move erratically, change direction randomly, and are barely larger than debris. Our targeting computers literally couldn't see them as threats. Another representative, this one from the hive mind, asked the question everyone was thinking. And the railguns? Why were they so effective? Because we stopped defending against kinetic weapons 2,000 years ago, Kalrex said bitterly. Our shields are optimized for energy weapons. Plasma, lasers, particle beams. We've spent millennia perfecting energy warfare. The humans ignored all of that and used simple projectiles moving at extreme velocity. Without our shields, our armor couldn't stop them. High Chancellor Vexner looked around the chamber. So the humans defeated us not by being more advanced, but by being more primitive. No, said a new voice. Science Director Mavrin stepped forward. She was small, even by her species standards, but her intelligence was respected throughout the galaxy. They defeated us by thinking differently. While we refined existing technology, they asked fundamental questions. Why fight the way everyone else fights? Why use energy weapons when kinetic weapons are cheaper and harder to defend against? Why build large ships when many small weapons can do the same job? She pulled up data showing Earth's military development over the past 50 years. Look at this. When humans first achieved faster-than-light travel, our analysts assumed they would follow the standard development path. Build bigger ships. Develop energy weapons. Create powerful shields. But they didn't. They studied galactic warfare and deliberately chose a different approach. The display showed human weapons development, railguns, drones, electronic warfare systems, all technologies that were considered outdated or unimportant by galactic standards. They turned our assumptions into weapons against us, Meverin continued. We assumed shields were essential, so they used weapons that bypassed shields. We assumed big ships were better, so they used swarms of small weapons. We assumed energy weapons were superior, so they used kinetic weapons we'd stop defending against. Every assumption we made, they exploited. Ambassador Ryan Clark had been standing quietly at the edge of the chamber. Now Vexner turned to him. Ambassador, the Council would hear from you. How did your species develop this approach to warfare? Ryan walked to the center of the chamber. He looked tired but alert. We learned it from our own history. Earth was never unified under one government. For thousands of years, humans fought other humans. We learned hard lessons about warfare. We learned that having the best weapons doesn't guarantee victory. We learned that superior numbers can be beaten by superior tactics. We learned that the army that adapts fastest usually wins. He gestured to the displays showing the battle. Every human military academy studies historical battles where smaller forces defeated larger ones. We study how guerrilla fighters beat organized armies. We study how technological disadvantages can be turned into strategic advantages. We brought 5,000 years of hard experience to our first real war against an alien species. A Krill representative, one of the few who survived the battle, spoke angrily. You speak of learning and tactics, but what you did was butchery. You destroyed hundreds of ships in minutes. Thousands of our people died. Ryan's expression hardened. Your armada came to invade our colony. You came to force us from our homes. You predicted our defeat. You expected us to surrender or die. We chose neither. We chose to win. If you want to blame someone for those deaths, blame the leaders who sent that fleet without understanding who they were fighting. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some supported the Krill, calling for retaliation. Others argued for immediate peace negotiations. The hive mind representative suggested quarantining human space entirely. Vexner called for order, but the unity that had held the council together for 200 years was fracturing. For the first time in living memory, the galactic powers could not agree. Finally, Science Director Meverin spoke again, her voice cutting through the noise. We are asking the wrong questions. The battle at New Virginia is over. The real question is, what happens now? The humans have proven they can destroy our fleets with primitive technology. What happens when they master our technology? What happens when human tactical thinking combines with galactic-level weapon systems? The chamber went quiet. It was the question everyone had been avoiding. Humans were decades, maybe a century, behind galactic technology standards. But they were learning fast. What would they be capable of in 10 years? 20? 50? Ryan Clark spoke into the silence. That depends entirely on what you do next. Earth didn't want this war. We were forced into it. We defended our colonies because you gave us no choice. But we don't want to conquer the galaxy. We don't want to become the next great threat. We want to live peacefully among you, as equals. As equals? A delegate from the Krill delegation stood, his scales flushed dark with anger. You destroy our fleet and then demand equality? We demand what we've earned, Ryan said firmly. You thought we were weak. You thought you could bully us into submission. We proved you wrong. Now you can choose to accept us as equals, or you can try to destroy us. But if you choose the second option, remember what happened at New Virginia. Remember that we ended your invasion in 4 minutes. Ask yourself how long your next fleet would last. Vexner raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Clark, you speak of peace, but you also make threats. I'm stating facts, High Chancellor. Fleet Admiral Lisa Martinez sent a message to all council members 6 hours ago. Did you read it? Vexner nodded slowly. We did. Earth's forces will remain in defensive positions. You will not advance beyond current colonial borders. But any attack on human territory will be met with the same response as New Virginia. Exactly. We're offering peace. Real peace between equals. But if someone attacks us again, we will defend ourselves. Swiftly, decisively, completely. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Defense Minister Colrex pulled up new data. Ambassador, our intelligence shows that Earth is already expanding its fleet. You're building more ships, training more crews, developing new weapons. How is this peaceful? Ryan met his eyes. How many ships is Earth building, Minister? Colrex checked his data. Current construction projects total 60 new vessels over the next 2 years. And how many ships does the Krill Empire operate? Nearly 800 combat vessels. And the Vex Collective? Approximately 600. Ryan spread his hands. So Earth is building 60 ships to defend our 12 colonies, while the Krill Empire maintains 800 ships. The Vex Collective has 600. The other council members have similar numbers. But Earth building defensive forces is somehow threatening? The logic was clear. Earth was still vastly outnumbered by any major galactic power. But the memory of New Virginia hung over the chamber. Numbers didn't seem to matter anymore when humans were involved. Vexner sat back in his seat, looking older than his years. The council needs time to deliberate. Ambassador Clark, you are dismissed. We will communicate our decision through official channels. Ryan nodded and turned to leave. As he walked toward the exit, Science Director Mavrin caught up with him. Ambassador, a word in private? They stepped into a side corridor. Mavrin looked around to make sure they were alone before speaking quietly. The council is fracturing. Some want peace. Others want revenge. A few are terrified and want to isolate Earth completely. But they're all asking the 3 months had passed as the battle at New Virginia. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Ambassador Ryan Clark sat in his office aboard the Earth Diplomatic Station, reviewing reports from across known space. The numbers told a story that would have seemed impossible before the battle. Insurance rates for shipping through human-controlled space had dropped by 40%. Pirate attacks near Earth colonies had stopped completely. Trade requests were flooding in from species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence 6 months ago. His assistant, Lieutenant Carmen Rodriguez, brought him another stack of documents. More trade proposals, sir. The Vex Collective wants to exchange gravity manipulation technology for military consultation. The Hive Mind is offering medical advances in exchange for drone warfare patents. And the next Commonwealth wants to establish a joint research facility. Ryan looked through the proposals. Any word from the Krill? Nothing official. But our intelligence says their government is in chaos. 3 different factions are fighting for control. The military leaders who planned the New Virginia invasion have all been removed from power. Ryan set down the documents and looked out the window at the space station's view. Ships from a dozen different species were docked at the station. Just 3 months ago, most of them wouldn't even return human. Communications. Schedule. Meetings with the Vex and the Hive Mind. Tell the Nex. Commonwealth, we're interested, but we need more. Details about their research proposal. Yes, sir. Also, President Torres is calling in 10 minutes for your weekly update. Ryan nodded and Carmen left the office. He used the time to organize his thoughts. Every week he spoke with President Megan Torres, giving her updates on the rapidly changing political situation. Every week, the situation was different. Right on schedule, the president's face appeared on the communication screen. She looked tired but satisfied. Ryan, I just read your latest report. 12 new trade agreements in the past month? 14 if you count the preliminary discussions with the next Commonwealth and the TAL Consortium. Everyone wants to talk to us now. Because they're afraid of us, Torres said. It wasn't a question. Some are afraid. Others see opportunity. The smart ones see both. Ryan pulled up a star map showing human space and the surrounding territories. The balance of power has shifted. The Krill Empire is weakened. The other major powers are watching each other nervously. Everyone wants to know whose side we're on. Torres leaned back in her chair. And whose side are we on? Our own. Same as always. But we can make mutually beneficial arrangements. The Vex trade proposal is particularly interesting. Their gravity technology could revolutionize our ship designs. In exchange, they want our help modernizing their military doctrine. Are you comfortable sharing our military technology? Ryan considered the question. We're not sharing weapons. We're sharing ideas. Teaching them to think about warfare differently. And we're being very selective. The Vex have been peaceful for 200 years. They're not looking to conquer anyone. They just want to make sure they don't end up like the Krill if someone attacks them. Approved. What else? The Council is still fractured. Vexner is trying to hold it together, but he's losing control. There's talk of restructuring the entire system. Some species want humanity to have a permanent seat with veto power. Torres raised an eyebrow. Really? 3 months ago, they were threatening to wipe out our colonies. 3 months ago, they thought we were weak. Now they know better. Vexner sees it as a way to stabilize the situation. Give us official power in exchange for security guarantees. What kind of security guarantees? Ryan pulled up more documents. Protection for smaller species. Some of the minor powers are worried that the Krill collapse will create a vacuum. They want to know that someone will defend them if another major power decides to expand aggressively. Torres was quiet for a moment, thinking. That's a lot of responsibility. It is, but it might be better than the alternative. If we refuse, some of these species might ally with more aggressive powers out of fear. We could end up facing a coalition that makes the Krill Armada look small. Send me the full proposal. I'll discuss it with the Joint Chiefs and the Senate. In the meantime, keep doing what you're doing. Build relationships. Make deals that benefit Earth. But Ryan, be careful. Success can be as dangerous as failure. I know, ma'am. I'm watching for problems. The call ended. Ryan turned back to his work, but his mind was on the president's warning. She was right to be cautious. Earth's sudden rise to power was making some species nervous. Not everyone would respond with trade proposals and friendship. 2 days later, Ryan got proof of that when he received a coded message from Science Director Mevrin requesting a private meeting. They met in a neutral location, a small cafe on the station's public level. Mevrin was already there when Ryan arrived, sitting at a corner table. Thank you for coming, Ambassador. I wanted to speak with you away from official channels. Ryan sat down across from her. What's going on? Meverin looked around to make sure no one was listening. There are elements within the council who are not happy with the current situation. They believe humanity rose too far, too fast. They want to push back before you become too powerful. Who? I can't give you names. Not yet. But they're planning to propose sanctions against Earth. Trade restrictions, travel limitations, technology embargoes. They'll frame it as security measures, but the real goal is to slow your development. Ryan felt anger building, but kept his voice calm. We defend our colonies, and suddenly we're a threat that needs to be contained. You destroyed the Krill Armada in 4 minutes. That terrifies people. Some of them remember their own history, times when powerful species conquered weaker ones. They look at humanity's military capability and see a potential conqueror. We've done nothing aggressive. We've stayed in our own territory. We've only made defensive preparations. Meverin nodded. I know, I've been arguing your case in the council. But fear doesn't respond to logic. They see your fleet expanding. They see you making military agreements with other species. They see Earth's technology advancing rapidly as you trade with more advanced civilizations. It makes them nervous. Ryan thought about the situation. Sanctions would hurt Earth's economy and slow their technological development. But fighting the sanctions would only reinforce the image of humanity as aggressive and dangerous. What do you suggest? Make a public gesture, something that shows Earth's peaceful intentions. The council vote on restructuring is in 2 weeks. If you can show you're not a threat before then, it might swing enough votes to defeat the sanctions. What kind of gesture? Meverin smiled slightly. That's for you to decide. But it needs to be something significant. Something that proves humans can be trusted with power. After Meverin left, Ryan contacted Fleet Admiral Lisa Martinez. He explained the situation and what was at stake. Martinez listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. So they're afraid we'll use our military against them, even though we haven't done anything to suggest that? Yes, ma'am. Fear doesn't need evidence. What kind of gesture would convince them? Something that shows restraint. Something that demonstrates we're not interested in conquest or domination. Martinez thought about it. I have an idea. It's risky, but it might work. Give me 24 hours. The next day, Martinez announced a new Earth Defense Force policy. All offensive weapons development would be suspended for 2 years. Earth would focus entirely on defensive systems and ship upgrades. Additionally, Earth would offer to share defensive technology with any species that signed. Mutual protection agreements. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Some saw it as weakness. Others saw it as exactly what Meverin had suggested. Proof that humanity wasn't planning to attack anyone. Ryan spent the next 2 weeks meeting with delegates, explaining Earth's position, building support. The vote on council restructuring was scheduled for a public session. Everyone would be watching. On the day of the vote, Ryan stood in the council chamber once again. But this time was different. This time, he wasn't standing alone in the center. This time, he had allies. The Vex Collective spoke first. We support the proposal to grant Earth a permanent council seat. They have proven themselves capable defenders. We need their strength to maintain peace. The hive mind followed. We agree. Earth's approach to warfare is unconventional, but their commitment to peace is clear. They stopped fighting the moment the Krill surrendered. They could have destroyed the entire armada, but chose mercy instead. One by one, other species voiced their support. Not all of them. Some still feared humanity. Some wanted the old power structure maintained. But enough supported the change. When the vote came, the proposal passed by a narrow margin. Earth would have a permanent seat on the Galactic Security Council with full voting rights. In exchange, Earth committed to providing defensive support for any council member that requested it. High Chancellor Vexener made the announcement official. Ambassador Ryan Clark, on behalf of Earth and its colonies, you are hereby granted permanent membership in the Galactic Security Council. May this mark the beginning of a new era of cooperation and peace. Ryan stood and accepted the honor. But as he looked around the chamber, 6 months after the battle at New Virginia, Captain Kevin Park stood in a classroom at the newly established Galactic Defense Academy on Earth. 26 students sat before him, representing 8 different species. They were all military officers, sent by their governments to learn how humans thought about warfare. Kevin looked at the diverse faces staring back at him. Some were eager. Others were skeptical. All of them were here because their leaders had seen what happened at New Virginia and wanted to understand how it was possible. Welcome to Strategic Warfare Theory, Kevin began. I'm Captain Park. I commanded the Eds Defiant during the New Virginia engagement. Before we start, I want to make one thing clear. This course is not about teaching you to fight like humans. It's about teaching you to think like humans. There's a difference. A Krill officer in the front row raised his hand. His name was Jexanar, and he had survived the battle aboard one of the few ships that were completely destroyed. Captain, my people studied human tactics for months before the invasion. Our analysts predicted every move you might make. Yet we still lost in minutes. How is that possible? Kevin pulled up a holographic display showing the battle. Your analysts made the same mistake everyone makes. They assumed we would fight the way you fight. They looked at our weapons and compared them to yours. They looked at our ships and found them inferior. But they never asked the most important question. Why would we choose to fight on your terms? He zoomed in on the moment the drones launched. War is not about having the best weapons. It's about using the weapons you have in ways your enemy doesn't expect. Your fleet was designed to fight other galactic navies using energy weapons and traditional tactics. We designed our fleet to fight you specifically. We studied your strengths and found your weaknesses. A student from the Vex Collective spoke up. But how did you know our weaknesses? You had never fought a galactic power before. We didn't need to fight you to understand you. We watched recordings of galactic conflicts. We studied ship designs. We analyzed battle reports that were publicly available. And we saw patterns. Every major power fought the same way. Same weapons. Same tactics. Same assumptions. You all evolved together, learned from each other, influenced each other's military development. You created a system that worked well against each other. Kevin changed the display to show Earth's military history. But humans evolved separately. We fought each other for thousands of years. We developed completely different approaches to warfare. When we entered the galactic community, we didn't try to copy what you were doing. We looked for the gaps in your system. Over the next hour, Kevin walked them through the principles of asymmetric warfare. Fight smart instead of fair. Turn your weaknesses into advantages. Force the enemy to fight on your terms, not theirs. Use deception and surprise. Strike where the enemy is unprepared. The students listened intently. Some took notes. Others asked questions. Jexanar, the Krill officer, raised his hand again near the end of the class. Captain Park, if you teach us these methods, won't you lose your advantage? The next time we fight, we'll know what to expect. Kevin smiled. That assumes there will be a next time. This academy exists to prevent that. If everyone understands how to fight effectively, maybe everyone will think twice before starting a war. And if someone does attack, maybe they'll lose so quickly that others won't try. After the class ended, Kevin made his way to his new office. He had been promoted to Admiral and given command of the Galactic Defense Academy. It was a position that didn't exist 6 months ago, created specifically to help alien species modernize their military thinking. His assistant, Commander Danny Wright, was waiting with the daily reports. Danny had served with Kevin on the Defiant and followed him to this new assignment. How was the class? Danny asked. Good. They're starting to understand. Though I'm not sure Jexanar will ever fully trust us. Can you blame him? We destroyed his fleet. Kevin sat down and reviewed the reports. More applications for the Academy. Requests from species across the galaxy who wanted to send officers for training. The program was growing faster than anyone expected. Any news from the Council? Kevin asked. Ambassador Clark sent an update. The restructuring vote passed. Earth officially has a permanent seat now. He's already dealing with 3 disputes between minor powers, all of them asking for Earth's mediation. Kevin shook his head. 6 months ago, they wanted to kick us out of the galaxy. Now they want us to solve their problems. That's what happens when you win too convincingly. People remember. Meanwhile, on New Virginia, the memorial ceremony was taking place. Fleet Admiral Lisa Martinez stood before a crowd of thousands, both human and alien. The memorial wall was made of black stone, inscribed with 372 names. The humans who died defending the colony, but there was a second wall next to it. This one listed the Krill casualties. Over 12,000 names. Sailors and soldiers who died because their leaders made bad decisions. Martinez had insisted on both memorials. The council had questioned it. Why honor your enemies dead? But she had been firm. These weren't enemies anymore. They were victims of a war that should never have happened. She spoke to the assembled crowd, her voice carrying across the memorial grounds. We gather here to remember those who were lost 6 months ago. 372 brave humans who stood against overwhelming odds. But we also remember 12,000 Krill who died far from home, following orders they believed in. She paused, looking at the names on both walls. This memorial exists not to celebrate victory, but to remind us of the cost of miscalculation. The Krill leaders thought they understood humanity. They were wrong. That mistake cost thousands of lives on both sides. Our job now is to make sure it never happens again. Among the crowd, Krill survivors stood beside human veterans. Former enemies sharing the same space, mourning the same losses. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It was understanding. After the ceremony, Martinez was approached by a Krill admiral named Veskir. He was one of the new generation of Krill leaders, promoted after the old military command was dissolved. Admiral Martinez, my government wishes to extend an invitation. We would like Earth to send a diplomatic mission to the Krill homeworld. It is time to move past New Virginia and build a different relationship. Martinez studied the Krill officer. She saw sincerity in his eyes, but also caution. He was taking a risk making this offer. Many Krill still hated Earth for their defeat. I'll forward your invitation to President Torres and Ambassador Clark. I think they'll be interested. I hope so. My people need to see that humans are not monsters. That you fought because you had to, not because you wanted to. Many Krill still do not understand this. Martinez nodded. Many humans don't understand it either. They think we won because we're better, stronger, superior. But the truth is simpler. We won because we were willing to do what was necessary to survive. That's not something to celebrate. It's just reality. Veskir seemed to appreciate the honesty. Perhaps that is the lesson we all need to learn. War is not glorious. It is necessary sometimes, but never glorious. Back on Earth, President Megan Torres read the invitation from the Krill government. She sat in her office with Ambassador Ryan Clark, discussing the implications. It could be a trap, Torres said, though she didn't sound convinced. It could be, but I don't think so. The new Krill leadership is trying to rebuild their reputation. They need this as much as we do. Torres leaned back in her chair. 6 months ago, we were preparing for an invasion. Now we're negotiating diplomatic missions. The galaxy changes fast, only because we forced it to change. New Virginia was a wake-up call. Every major power is rethinking their assumptions about warfare and power. Some are afraid of us. Others see us as potential allies. But everyone is paying attention. And the sanctions proposal? The one Mevrin warned you about? Dead in the water. Once we got the council seat, the support for sanctions collapsed. Now everyone wants to be our friend instead of our enemy. Torres pulled up reports from across human-controlled space. New colonies were being established. Trade agreements were being signed. Technology was being shared. Earth was more prosperous and secure than at any point in history. We're on a good path, she said. But I worry about what comes next. We proved we can win battles in minutes. Can we maintain peace for decades? Centuries? Ryan considered the question. That's the real test, isn't it? Anyone can destroy things quickly. Building takes longer. But I think we can do it. We've made allies. We've shown restraint. We're teaching rather than conquering. These are good foundations. I hope you're right. 1 week later, Captain Danny Wright took command of the EDS Defiant. It was his first command, and he felt the weight of responsibility as he stood on the bridge. The ship had been refitted and upgraded, but it still carried the scars of battle. The Defiant's new mission was escort duty for the diplomatic delegation to the Krill homeworld. Ambassador Clark would lead the mission, along with representatives from Earth's government and military. It was a historic moment. Former enemies meeting in peace. As the ship prepared to depart, Danny walked through the corridors. He saw crew members from the New Virginia battle. They had volunteered for this mission, wanting to be part of the next chapter. Veterans of the